It happened exactly 23 minutes into what Adam Schiff was certain would be the defining moment of his political career. He had walked into the White House East Room believing he was the hunter, the Grand Inquisitor finally cornering his prey. He had spent 8 years building this narrative, crafting the persona of the somber intelligence expert, the man burdened by dark secrets he couldn't share, but could only warn us about. He thought this press conference was his victory lap. He had no idea he was standing on a trap door. The setup was unprecedented. The White House had billed it as a transparency summit, a direct confrontation to address the lingering wounds of the Russia investigation. President Trump had invited his fiercest critics to the front row, offering them the first crack at the microphone. The media went into a frenzy. CNN called it the showdown. MSNBC ran a countdown clock. The atmosphere inside the East Room was electric, humid, with the breath of 300 reporters packed shoulder to shoulder, cameras trained like sniper rifles on the podium. Adam Schiff sat in the front row, adjusting his cuffs. He had a notepad on his knee, filled with questions designed to be unanswerable. He had rehearsed the cadence of his voice, stern, disappointed, authoritative. He planned to ask about the Trump Tower meeting, about Manafort, about the endless smoke that he had spent nearly a decade insisting was proof of a fire. He looked around the room, nodding to allies in the press corps. He felt invincible. At 2 p.m. sharp, Donald Trump entered. He didn't stride in with his usual bombastic rally energy. There was no YMCA playing over the speakers. He walked in slowly, carrying a thick black binder under his arm. He looked calm, dangerously calm. He placed the binder on the podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked directly at Adam Schiff. "Thank you all for being here," Trump said, his voice level. "For 8 years, this country has been torn apart by a lie that was told over and over again by people who knew better, people who hid behind security clearances and classified briefings to deceive the American public." Schiff stiffened. He expected an attack, but this felt different. It wasn't an insult. It was a preamble. "Today," Trump continued, "I am declassifying the truth. All of it. Every briefing, every memo, every intelligence assessment that was hidden from you." He picked up a remote control. "Senator Schiff," Trump said, "you have the first question. Please, go ahead." Schiff stood up. He took the microphone. He felt the weight of history. "Mr. President," he began, his voice projecting well, "for years, there have been documented contacts between your campaign and Russian operatives. The American people deserve to know why you have consistently tried to conceal the nature of these relationships and why you ignored the intelligence community's warnings about compromise." It was a perfect question. It assumed guilt. It sounded serious. "Great question," Trump said. He didn't deflect. He didn't attack Schiff's character. He simply pressed a button on the remote. Behind him, 2 massive LED screens flickered to life. A document appeared. It wasn't a tweet or a campaign graphic. It was an official government document stamped top secret, Chattern comment, no foreign at the top, with a heavy red line drawn through it and a new stamp, declassified January 15, 2025. "This," Trump said, pointing to the screen, "is the official transcript of the Gang of 8 briefing from March 15, 2017. The Gang of 8 includes the leaders of both parties and the intel committees. You were there, Adam. We can see your signature on the log." The text on the screen was magnified. It was crisp, bureaucratic, and undeniable. Subject: FBI counterintelligence assessment regarding Trump campaign, Russia. Date: March 15, 2017. Finding: to date, the Bureau has investigated multiple contacts. Investigators have found no evidence of coordination, conspiracy, or collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. The investigation continues, but no credible intelligence supports the hypothesis of coordination. The words "no evidence" were highlighted in yellow. March 15, 2017. Trump read aloud. You sat in a secure room. The FBI looked you in the eye. They told you, explicitly, that they had found no evidence of coordination. Trump looked down at Schiff, who was still standing, the microphone hanging loosely in his hand. You heard that, Trump said. You signed the paper acknowledging you heard it. That was a Wednesday. Trump clicked the remote again. Now, Trump said, let's see what you did on Thursday. Schiff's heart hammered against his ribs. He knew what was coming. He remembered the interview. He remembered the feeling of power he had when he gave it, the thrill of being the man who knew the secrets. But looking at the document on the screen, the cold, hard proof of what he had actually been told, he realized with a sickening lurch that the context had changed. He wasn't the hero of the story anymore. He was the villain. And 78 million people were watching the transformation happen in real time. The air in the East Room seemed to vanish, sucked out by the collective gasp of the press corps. On the screen, the classified briefing log from March 15, 2017, remained frozen, the words, "no evidence," looming like a verdict. Adam Schiff stood frozen in the front row, trapped in the glare of the lights, his mind racing to find an exit ramp that didn't exist. Donald Trump didn't give him the chance to breathe. He pressed the button on the remote again. The screen split. On the left remained the FBI briefing document. On the right, a video player appeared. This is the very next day, Trump narrated, his voice clinically detached. March 16, 2017. Less than 24 hours after you left that secure briefing room, you went on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd. The video played. The audio was crystal clear, booming through the high-quality speakers of the East Room. There was Adam Schiff, younger, eager, leaning into the camera with that familiar expression of grave, patriotic concern. Chuck, the video Schiff said, I can't go into the specifics because of the classification, but I can tell you that I have seen more than circumstantial evidence of collusion. There is direct evidence of deception, and there is evidence of a relationship that is deeply concerning. Trump paused the video. The face of Adam Schiff on the screen was frozen in mid-sentence, looking self-righteous and assured. Trump turned to the real Adam Schiff, who was standing 10 feet away, looking like a ghost. More than circumstantial evidence, Trump repeated. That is what you told the country. That is what you told the world. He pointed to the document on the left. But the FBI told you, 24 hours earlier, that there was no evidence. So, Trump asked, leaning over the podium, his eyes locking onto Schiff's. I have a simple question, a yes or no question. Were you lying to the FBI in the briefing, or were you lying to Chuck Todd on television? The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush bone. This wasn't a political debate where you could pivot to broad themes or national security concerns. This was a binary trap. Two contradictory facts were displayed side by side. One of them had to be a lie. Schiff raised the microphone. His hand was trembling, a subtle vibration, but visible to everyone in the room. Mr. President, Schiff said, his voice straining for authority but coming out thin. You are cherry-picking a single initial assessment from the early stages of an investigation. As you know, intelligence evolves. There were contacts. Stop, Trump commanded. It wasn't a shout. It was a snap of the whip. Don't use the word evolved. The FBI said no evidence. You said direct evidence. That isn't evolution, Adam. That is fabrication. You looked the American people in the eye, Trump continued, his voice rising in intensity, and you used your position on the Intelligence Committee to sell a lie. You told them, trust me, I've seen the secret papers. You knew they couldn't see the papers. You banked your entire career on the fact that these documents would stay classified forever. Trump gestured to the screen. Well, they aren't classified anymore. The shield is gone. You scared the country, Trump said. You told grandmothers in Ohio that their president was a Russian agent. You told soldiers that their commander-in-chief was a traitor. You caused millions of people to lose faith in their government. And you did it, Trump said, pointing to the date on the document, knowing it wasn't true. You walked out of that secure room, you put on your makeup, you sat in that chair, and you lied. Schiff tried to interrupt again. The Mueller report subsequently found multiple instances of... The Mueller report found no conspiracy, Trump roared, slamming his hand on the podium. Just like the FBI told you in 2017, just like the CIA told you, just like everyone told you. Trump took a breath, composing himself. He looked out at the press corps, who were furiously typing, their faces lit by the glow of the damning screens. But it wasn't just once, was it? Trump asked softly. If it was just one mistake, maybe we could forgive it. Maybe you misheard. Maybe you were confused. He clicked the remote. The screen changed. Now, a timeline appeared. It stretched across the massive display, a horizontal line marked with dates. Above the line were red dots representing intelligence briefings. Below the line were blue dots representing Schiff's TV appearances. We checked the records, Trump said. We matched every single time you went into the SKF, sensitive compartmented information facility, with every single time you went on television. May 2017, Trump read, briefing says, no changes to assessment. You go on CNN. Evidence is hiding in plain sight. July 2017, Trump continued. Briefing says, Steele dossier unverified and likely fabricated. You go on MSNBC. The dossier is proving to be accurate. It's a pattern, Adam, Trump said. It's not a mistake. It's a strategy. Schiff stood there, the microphone feeling like a piece of lead in his hand. He realized, with a terrifying clarity, that Trump wasn't just debating him. He was dismantling him. He was taking the one thing Schiff had always relied on, his credibility as an insider, and turning it into evidence of fraud. You weren't an investigator, Trump said, looking at him with something approaching pity. You were a screenwriter. You were writing a spy novel for CNN, and you used the seal of the United States Congress to sell it. But the book is over, Trump said, and we are just getting to the plot twist. Because lying about the briefings wasn't enough for you, was it? You had to leak them too. A new document appeared on the screen. It was a phone log. Schiff's stomach dropped. He knew those numbers. He knew those dates. The trap hadn't just sprung. It was closing around his neck. The phone log on the screen was bad, but Donald Trump wasn't ready to talk about leaks yet. He wanted to finish the autopsy of the lie first. He wanted the audience to understand the sheer scale of the deception. One lie is a mistake, Trump said, clicking the remote to clear the single document. Two lies is a coincidence. But what Adam Schiff did? That was an industry. The screen behind Trump transformed. Gone were the static documents. In their place appeared a dynamic, scrolling graphic. It looked like a stock ticker, but instead of prices, it showed dates, network logos, and quotes. "My staff did a little project," Trump said, gesturing to the wall of data. "We went back through the last 8 years. We found every single time you went on television, CNN, MSNBC, Sunday shows, late-night shows, and claimed you had seen evidence of collusion." He paused, letting the timeline scroll. It was endless. "We counted 227 times," Trump said. He let the number hang there. 227 times. You looked into a camera, you looked at the American people, and you said some variation of, "The evidence is in plain sight," or "I have seen direct evidence," or "The proof is overwhelming." Trump pressed a button. "Let's watch the highlight reel." A video began to play. It was a supercut, edited for maximum impact. Cut to Schiff on CNN. "I have seen direct evidence." Cut to Schiff on MSNBC. "More than circumstantial." Cut to Schiff on The View. "Ample evidence of collusion." Cut to Schiff on ABC. "Evidence that is not circumstantial." The clips came faster and faster. Schiff in a blue tie. Schiff in a red tie. Schiff in a hallway. Schiff in a studio. The background changed, the interviewer changed, but the line never did. It was a drumbeat of deception. Evidence. 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 In the corner of the screen, a digital counter ticked up with each clip. 47, 89, 143, 192. Adam Schiff stood in the front room, forced to watch a montage of his own dishonesty. It was agonizing. The cumulative effect was devastating. Seen individually over 8 years, the appearances seemed authoritative. Seen all at once, back to back, they looked like the raving of a con man trying to sell a monorail. The counter hit 227, and the screen froze on a close-up of Schiff's face, looking particularly smug. Trump turned back to the real Schiff, whose face was currently drained of all color. 227 times, Trump said softly. "And we checked the briefing logs for every single one of those dates." He pointed to the screen. "Every single briefing said no. There was never a moment, not one, where the FBI or the CIA told you they had found conspiracy. Not in 2017, not in 2018, not in 2019. "So, Senator," Trump asked, "what evidence were you talking about? Was it invisible? Was it imaginary? Or was it just a script you wrote to get booked on Rachel Maddow?" Schiff cleared his throat. He tried to summon the indignation that had served him so well for so long. "Mr. President, the intelligence picture is complex. There were contacts that raised grave counterintelligence concerns, even if they didn't meet the legal standard of criminal conspiracy. I was speaking to the threat to national security." "You said collusion!" Trump's voice boomed, cutting through the spin. "You didn't say counterintelligence concerns. You said you had proof of a crime. You said I was a traitor." "That isn't evolving intelligence, Senator," Trump said, his voice dropping to an icy calm. "That is systematic lying." "You built a career on a phantom," Trump said. "You became a star. You raised millions of dollars. You got book deals. All because you claimed to have a secret that didn't exist." The room was silent. The reporters, many of whom had booked Schiff for those very segments, looked down at their notepads. They were part of the montage, too, and they knew it. "But lying on TV is one thing," Trump said, moving back to the podium. "That's just politics. Dirty politics, but politics." "What you did next," Trump said, reaching for the remote, "that's a crime." The timeline of TV appearances vanished. The screen went black for a beat, cleansing the palette, before a new image appeared. This one wasn't a list or a video. It was a web. A complex network diagram lit up the screen. In the center was a picture of Adam Schiff. Radiating out from him were lines connecting to logos of major news organizations: the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN. "Let's talk about the leaks," Trump said. "You see, Adam, when classified information ends up on the front page of the New York Times, the FBI gets upset. They investigate. They track who had the info, and they track who talked to the reporters." Trump pointed to the screen. "These are phone records," Trump said. "FBI counter-leak investigation files. Declassified today." He zoomed in on a specific section of the web. December 12, 2016, Trump read, 4:47 p.m. "A call is placed from your personal cell phone to a producer at CNN. The call lasts 15 minutes. December 13, 2016, Trump continued. The very next morning, CNN breaks a story. Intel chiefs presented Trump with claims of Russian compromise. The story cites sources familiar with the briefing. Trump looked at Schiff. "You were the source, Adam." He moved to the next data point. December 18, 2016, 3:22 p.m. "A call from your office line to Adam Goldman at the New York Times. 23 minutes. December 20th, 2016. The Times runs a story. British intelligence shared evidence with U.S. officials, citing congressional sources. "It's a perfect pattern," Trump said. Call, story, 43 times. "You didn't just lie about the briefings," Trump said, walking to the edge of the stage. "You leaked them. You took classified information, secrets you swore an oath to protect, and you gave them to your friends in the media to hurt me. And then," Trump added with a dark chuckle, "you would go on television the next day and say, 'I can't comment on classified matters, but this report is very disturbing.' You were confirming your own leak." Schiff stepped forward, his voice sharper now. "Mr. President, these are characterizations. You are drawing inferences from standard interactions with the press. Members of Congress speak to reporters every day. That is part of our oversight duty." "Oversight," Trump snapped. "Leak classified intelligence about a sitting president is not oversight. It is a felony." "You weaponized your security clearance," Trump said. "You used the secrets of the United States government as political ammunition. You knew the FBI investigation was finding nothing, so you leaked partial, misleading snippets to the press to keep the narrative alive." "That isn't oversight, Senator," Trump said. "That is propaganda." He pointed to a specific line on the chart. "Look at this one. January 10, 2017. You called David Ignatius at the Washington Post. An hour later, he runs the story about Mike Flynn's calls. A felony leak. A man's life ruined. And you were on the phone with the reporter right before it dropped." "Did you tell him?" Trump asked. "Did you break the law to get a headline?" Schiff didn't answer. He couldn't. To deny it was to invite a perjury trap. To admit it was to confess to a crime. He stood there, the silence stretching out, damning him more than any answer could. "You see," Trump said to the audience, "he can't answer. Because the phone records don't lie. The timestamps don't lie. For 8 years, you told everyone I was the security threat," Trump said. "You said I couldn't be trusted with the nuclear codes. You said I was compromised." "But looking at this map," Trump said, gesturing to the web of leaks, "it looks like the real security threat was sitting in the chairman's chair." "You leaked, you lied, and you got caught." Trump turned back to the podium. "But leaks are bad," he said. "Fabricating evidence in an official impeachment hearing? That is worse. That is fraud." "Let's talk about the parody." Donald Trump adjusted the papers on his podium. The atmosphere in the East Room had shifted from shock to a grim fascination. The reporters, who for years had treated Adam Schiff as a high priest of truth, were now watching him be defrocked in real time. "We've seen the lies," Trump said. "We've seen the leaks. But now, let's talk about the theater." He clicked the remote. The web of phone records vanished. September 26, 2019, Trump announced, the House Intelligence Committee, an impeachment hearing, millions of people watching. "You remember this, don't you, Adam?" Trump asked. "You decided to read the transcript of my call with President Zelensky. Or, what you said was the transcript." The screen split again. On the left was the actual official transcript of the call, released by the White House. On the right was a video of Adam Schiff sitting in the chairman's seat, looking grave and important. "Let's listen to what you told the American people I said," Trump said. He pressed play. Video Schiff looked into the camera and began to read with dramatic flair. "I have a favor I want from you, though, and I'm going to say this only 7 times, so you better listen good. I want you to make up dirt on my political opponent, understand? Lots of it. On this and on that." Trump paused the video. "Make up dirt." Trump repeated the phrase 7 times. He turned to the transcript on the left side of the screen. "I'm looking at the transcript, Adam. I don't see those words. I don't see make up dirt. I don't see listen good. I don't see 7 times. "You made them up," Trump said, his voice flat. "You sat in a congressional hearing, with the seal of the United States behind you, and you read a fictional script that you wrote. You put words in the mouth of the President of the United States that were never spoken." Schiff stepped forward, his face flushed. "Mr. President, as I stated at the time, that was a parody. It was a characterization of the essence of your corrupt demand. It was meant to convey the gravity." "Parody?" Trump interrupted, incredulous. "You are the chairman of the Intelligence Committee leading an impeachment inquiry. It's not Saturday Night Live. It's a legal proceeding." Trump pulled a card from his pocket. "You say it was parody? Let's see if the audience got the joke." 63%, Trump read. "That is the percentage of people polled who believed those were my actual words. Because you didn't say, 'Here is a joke.' You said, 'The essence of what the president communicates is this.' You tricked them," Trump said. "You lied to them. You fabricated evidence in an official hearing to make me sound like a mob boss because the actual transcript wasn't bad enough for you." "That isn't oversight," Trump said, pointing a finger at Schiff. "That is fraud." "You have legal immunity for what you say in Congress," Trump acknowledged. "The speech or debate clause protects you. You can lie on the floor of the House and not go to jail. But it doesn't protect your reputation. It proves you are willing to manufacture reality to get what you want." Schiff stood silent. The defense of parody had always been weak, but seeing the fake dialogue played next to the real text made it look pathetic. It looked like what it was, a stunt that backfired. "But you didn't just make up the call," Trump said, moving on. "You also made up how the whole thing started. Let's talk about the whistleblower." The screen changed again. A new timeline appeared, this one focused on August and September of 2019. "The impeachment started because of a whistleblower complaint," Trump said. "We were told this was a brave, independent patriot who saw something wrong and came forward." "And you," Trump said, looking at Schiff, "you went on television, Morning Joe, September 17th, and you were asked directly if you had spoken to the whistleblower." Trump played the clip. Sam Stein asks, "Have you heard from the whistleblower?" Adam Schiff replies, We have not spoken directly with the whistleblower. We have not spoken directly, Trump repeated. Clear answer. Definitive. He clicked the remote. Now, let's look at the visitor logs for your office. A document appeared. It was a log from the House Intelligence Committee's Secure Spaces. August 12, 2019, Trump read, 1 month before the complaint was filed. The whistleblower calls your staff director. Call lasts 43 minutes. August 14, 2019, Trump continued, an in-person meeting at your Capitol Hill office. The whistleblower meets with your top aides. August 28, 2019, Trump said, a second meeting. Your staff helps him find a lawyer. They help him draft the complaint. You didn't just speak to him, Adam, Trump said. You coached him. You knew exactly who he was. You knew exactly what he was going to say. Because your team helped him write it. And then, Trump said, gesturing to the video clip still frozen on the screen, you went on TV and looked the American people in the eye and said, we haven't spoken. That is a lie, Trump stated. A direct, verifiable lie about the origins of an impeachment. You weren't the judge, Adam, Trump said. You were the architect. You built the trap, you baited the hook, and then you pretended you were just a neutral observer when it sprang. That is coordination, Trump said, and hiding it is deception. Schiff's mouth opened to protest, to explain the difference between we, meaning the committee, and we, meaning himself personally. But he stopped. He knew how it would sound. He knew that splitting hairs about the definition of spoken with was exactly what a guilty person did. You coordinated with the accuser, Trump summarized. You lied about the coordination, and you used the fake process to try to overturn an election. But speaking of elections, Trump said, his voice darkening, let's talk about the big one. Let's talk about 2020. Let's talk about the laptop. And let's talk about the 51 spies. The air in the room grew heavier. Everyone knew this was the final blow. The Russia investigation was history. Impeachment was history. But the Hunter Biden laptop story? That was the wound that was still fresh. That was the lie that might have actually changed history. You love to talk about Russian disinformation, Adam, Trump said. It's your favorite phrase. But in October 2020, you didn't just talk about it. You created it. Trump clicked the remote. The screen went black. This, Trump said, is the smoking gun. The East Room was quiet enough to hear the hum of the hard drives powering the displays. Donald Trump stood at the podium, his expression shifting from the aggressive prosecutor to something quieter, more dangerous. He looked like a man holding the final piece of a puzzle that would change the picture entirely. We've talked about Russia, Trump said. We've talked about Ukraine. We've talked about the leaks. But there is one more lie, he continued. One that didn't just smear a president. It saved a candidate. It changed an election. He clicked the remote. The screen went black for a dramatic second, then flared to life with a new document. October 2020, Trump set the scene. 3 weeks before the presidential election. The New York Post publishes a story about a laptop belonging to Hunter Biden. Emails, photos, evidence of foreign business dealings. And you, Adam, Trump said, turning to Schiff, you knew exactly what to do. You went to your playbook. You yelled, Russia. This is a classified briefing log from October 14, 2020, the day the story broke. The FBI briefed the Gang of 8. You were there. The document on the screen was magnified. Subject: Hunter Biden laptop, foreign influence analysis. Finding: the device has been authenticated. Forensic analysis confirms the data is genuine. Bureau has found no intelligence indicating the laptop is part of a Russian disinformation campaign. The FBI told you it was real, Trump said, his voice hard. They told you it wasn't Russia. They told you it wasn't a hack. They told you it was authentic. Trump clicked the remote. 2 days later, October 16, 2020, you went on CNN with Wolf Blitzer. The video played. There was Schiff, looking grave and authoritative. Wolf, we know that this whole smear on Joe Biden comes from the Kremlin. Clearly, the origins of this whole smear are from the Kremlin, and the president is only too happy to have Kremlin help. From the Kremlin, Trump repeated. You sat there, knowing the FBI had just told you it wasn't the Kremlin, and you lied to the American people 3 weeks before an election. But you didn't just lie, Trump said. You organized a cover-up. He clicked the remote again. A new document appeared. It wasn't a government memo. It was an email chain. We subpoenaed these, Trump said. Emails from your committee staff. October 17, 2020, Trump read. From your staff director to former CIA Director John Brennan and James Clapper. Subject: urgent need for letter on laptop story. Trump read the body of the email aloud. Gentlemen, the chairman feels it is critical to frame this story as a Russian information operation before the debate. We need a statement from senior intel officials to give the media a hook. Trump looked up. You wrote the letter, Adam, Trump said. The famous letter of 51 spies. The letter that said the laptop had all the classic earmarks of Russian disinformation. You organized it. Your staff drafted the talking points. You got 51 former officials to sign their names to a lie that you knew was a lie because you had seen the FBI report. And look what happened, Trump said. He showed a montage of headlines. Twitter banning the New York Post. Facebook suppressing the story. Joe Biden on the debate stage citing the letter to dismiss the laptop. You censored the truth, Trump said. You used your security clearance to trick the media and the tech companies into silencing a legitimate news story. That isn't oversight, Trump said. That isn't politics. That is election interference. You rigged the information war, Trump said, walking to the edge of the stage. You knew the laptop was real. The FBI told you. But you decided the American people weren't allowed to know that. So you created a fake letter, from fake experts to support a fake narrative. Schiff looked at the floor. The letter of 51 had been his masterstroke in 2020, the shield that protected Biden. Seeing the internal emails on a 10-foot screen, the sausage-making of deception exposed, stripped away the veneer of patriotism. It wasn't national security. It was a political op. You cheated, Trump said simply. You cheated the voters. You cheated history. And you used the Intelligence Committee to do it. Trump walked back to the podium and placed his hands on either side of it. He looked exhausted, not physically, but spiritually, as if the weight of 8 years of fighting these lies had finally lifted. We're done with the slides, Trump said. Turn them off. The screens went black. The room was silent. Trump looked at Adam Schiff. I have one last question, Trump said. The darkness of the screen seemed to make the room smaller, more intimate. The spectacle was over. Now there was only the reckoning. Donald Trump stood at the podium, stripping away the showmanship, leaving only the cold, hard reality of the evidence he had just presented. Adam Schiff stood in the front row, a solitary figure in a sea of reporters who were no longer looking at him with admiration, but with the clinical detachment of coroners viewing a body. We have gone through the record, Trump said, his voice quiet. We have seen the Russia briefings. We have seen the Ukraine transcript. We have seen the leak logs. We have seen the laptop emails. He leaned forward, looking directly into Schiff's eyes. So, Senator Schiff, I want to ask you the question you have been asking me for 8 years. Trump paused. He let the silence stretch until it was uncomfortable, until the only sound in the room was the shutter of a single camera. How many times? Trump asked. How many times did you lie to the American people? Schiff opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Was it the 227 times you claimed you saw evidence of collusion when the FBI told you there was none? Trump asked. Was it the 43 times you leaked classified secrets to the New York Times and CNN, then went on TV to confirm your own leaks? Was it when you fabricated a fake transcript of my call with a foreign leader and read it into the congressional record as fact? Was it when you coordinated with the whistleblower and then told the country you had never spoken to him? Was it when you knew the Hunter Biden laptop was real, but you organized 51 spies to call it Russian disinformation so you could win an election? Trump's voice rose with each question, a crescendo of accountability. How many times, Adam? Trump demanded. How many times did you use your security clearance as a weapon? How many times did you look into a camera and deceive the people who pay your salary? You spent 8 years calling me a liar, Trump said. You called me a traitor. You impeached me twice. You tore this country apart. And the whole time, Trump said, gesturing to the empty screens, the whole time, it was you. You were the one holding the smoking gun. You were the one hiding the truth. You were the disinformation machine. The room was frozen. 78 million people watching at home held their breath. They waited for the rebuttal. They waited for the skilled debater, the Harvard lawyer, the prosecutor to say something, anything, to defend himself. But Adam Schiff said nothing. He stood there, pale and small. The weight of the documents, the dates, the signatures, the phone logs, it pressed down on him. There was no spin that could survive the receipts. There was no context that could explain away the signatures on the briefing logs. Trump watched him for a long moment. Then he shook his head. You don't have an answer, Trump said softly, because the answer is thousands. You lied so many times you forgot what the truth looked like. Trump gathered his papers. The American people deserved better, Trump said. They deserved the truth. They deserved an intelligence committee that protected them, not one that gaslit them. Instead, Trump said, looking at Schiff with finality, they got you. This press conference is over. Trump turned and walked out of the East Room. He didn't look back. The spell broke. The room erupted into chaos. Reporters jumped to their feet, shouting questions, not at the empty podium, but at the man standing in the front row. Senator, did you leak the Flynn call? Senator, why did you sign the letter? Senator, is that your signature on the briefing log? Adam Schiff didn't answer. He couldn't. He grabbed his notepad, turned on his heel, and pushed his way toward the side exit. His aides tried to form a flying wedge, blocking the cameras, but the swarm was too thick. Senator! Senator! He kept his head down, eyes fixed on the carpet, fleeing the scene of his own destruction. The confident entrance of an hour ago was a distant memory. He looked like a man trying to outrun a tsunami. As he pushed through the double doors, escaping into the hallway, the image was captured by 100 cameras. Adam Schiff, the man who demanded the truth, running away from it. Within minutes, the internet exploded. The clip of "How many times?" hit 93 million views in the first hour. The hashtag #SchiffLied trended #1 globally. The receipts, The high-resolution images of the briefing logs and emails were downloaded millions of times, spread across every platform. For 8 years, Adam Schiff had been the hunter. But in 90 minutes, with nothing but a projector and a stack of declassified paper, Donald Trump had turned him into the hunted. The narrative had shattered. The receipts were out, and there was no putting the secrets back in the box. The press conference ended at 3:43 p.m. By 4 p.m., the political career of Adam Schiff was being autopsied on every screen in America. Donald Trump had walked out of the East Room, leaving behind more than just a stunned silence. He had left a digital crater. The Schiff dossier, the 847-page compilation of every briefing, leak, and lie, was uploaded to the White House website the moment Trump left the podium. The server crashed 3 times in the first 20 minutes from the traffic. On cable news, the reaction was a mix of shock and scrambling. Fox News was in a victory lap, running the side-by-side clips of Schiff's parody hearing next to the actual transcript. But the real devastation was happening on the networks that had built Schiff up. On CNN, the anchors looked shell-shocked. They had booked Schiff hundreds of times. They had aired his claims of direct evidence without question. Now, they were looking at the briefing logs with his signature on them, documents that proved he knew there was no evidence the whole time. "It is hard to reconcile," a CNN legal analyst admitted, staring at the document on the screen. "His signature is right there. The briefing says no evidence. The next day, he went on our air and said he saw evidence. That is a problem." MSNBC tried to pivot. "This is a weaponization of classification," one host argued. "Trump is cherry-picking documents." But the guest, a former federal prosecutor, shook his head. "The documents are declassified. They are public record now. You can't cherry-pick a signature on a log. He was in the room. He knew. And he lied. That's not politics. That's proof." By the next morning, the dam broke. 17 ethics complaints were filed with the Senate Ethics Committee before noon. They weren't just from Republicans. Watchdog groups that usually targeted Trump were filing against Schiff, citing the egregious abuse of security clearance. The Department of Justice announced a review of the leak investigation. The phone records Trump had shown, the 43 calls to reporters followed by classified leaks, were a roadmap for prosecution. The Schiff rules of immunity didn't apply to felonies committed on a cell phone, but the most brutal blow came from his own colleagues. In the Senate, the mood was toxic. Senators hate being embarrassed, and Schiff had just embarrassed the entire institution. He had used the Intelligence Committee, the one committee that relies on absolute trust, as a partisan toy. A resolution was introduced to remove Schiff from the Intelligence Committee. Usually, these votes split down party lines. Not this time. The vote was 67 to 33. 17 Democrats crossed the aisle to vote against him. It was a stunning rebuke. When your own party votes to strip you of your committee assignment, you are dead walking. They weren't protecting him anymore. They were cutting him loose to save themselves. The polling in California confirmed the collapse. Schiff's approval rating plummeted from 58% to 29% in a single week. A 29-point crash. It was the fastest drop in the history of modern polling. The Washington Post, forcing itself to cover the story it had helped create, published a massive interactive feature. The Schiff Timeline. It allowed readers to scroll through all 227 lies, matching the TV clips to the briefing docs. It was the most read article of the year. Schiff went into hiding. He canceled his town halls. He canceled his fundraisers. He refused all interview requests, except for one disastrous appearance on MSNBC, where he stammered through non-answers until even the friendly host had to cut to commercial. The invincible senator, the giant of the resistance, had been reduced to a cautionary tale. He was radioactive. Book deals were canceled. Speaking agencies dropped him. The letter of 51 spies began issuing statements claiming they were misled by Schiff's staff. The rats were fleeing the ship, and Adam Schiff was left alone at the helm. 6 months after the press conference, Adam Schiff stood at a podium in a hotel ballroom in Los Angeles. The room was half empty. There were no cheering crowds. There was no resistance energy. Just a tired-looking man in a suit that seemed a size too big. After much consideration, Schiff read from a prepared statement, his voice lacking its old theatrical boom, "And consultation with my family, I have decided not to seek re-election to the United States Senate." He didn't mention the press conference. He didn't mention the documents. He talked about new chapters and passing the torch. But everyone knew the truth. He was quitting because he was going to lose. Internal polling showed him losing the Democratic primary by 38 points. A newcomer, Katie Porter, had launched a campaign with a simple slogan, "Truth matters." Her ads were just 30-second clips of Trump's press conference. She didn't have to say a word. Schiff had destroyed himself. Schiff finished his speech, took no questions, and walked off the stage. It was a quiet, pathetic end to a career that had consumed the national attention for a decade. 1 year later, Donald Trump sat on the patio at Mar-a-Lago, the Florida sun reflecting off the ocean behind him. A historian was interviewing him for a biography. "Mr. President," the historian asked, looking back on that press conference, "do you have any regrets about what you did to Adam Schiff?" Trump smiled. It wasn't a gloating smile. It was the smile of a man who had set the record straight. "I didn't do anything to him," Trump said, taking a sip of Diet Coke. "I just turned on the lights." "He destroyed himself," Trump continued. "He spent 8 years building a lie. He thought, because the truth was classified, he was safe. He thought he could say whatever he wanted and nobody could check his homework. He forgot that the president has the ultimate power to declassify." "Do you feel vindicated?" the historian asked. "The country is vindicated," Trump corrected. For 8 years, they were told their president was a traitor. They were lied to by the people supposed to protect them. The declassification fixed that. It showed them who the real liars were. "What is the lesson?" the historian asked. Trump leaned forward. "The receipts don't lie," Trump said. "That is the lesson. You can spin. You can act. You can have the media on your side. But if the documents say no evidence and you say direct evidence, eventually, you are going to get caught." Schiff thought he was the smart one, Trump said. He thought he was the prosecutor. But he forgot the first rule of prosecution. Never ask a question if you don't know what the evidence shows. "I knew what the evidence showed," Trump said, tapping the table, "because I had the receipts." The legacy of Adam Schiff was cemented. He wasn't remembered as the man who fought Trump. He was remembered as the man who lied 227 times. He became a verb in Washington. To Schiff, someone meant to lie about classified info until you got caught. Congress passed the Schiff Accountability Act, mandating that members sign affidavits when discussing classified briefings. The intelligence community overhauled its reporting standards. And every time a politician went on television and claimed to have secret evidence, the American people remembered the East Room. They remembered the split screens. They remembered the silence when the question was asked. "How many times?" And they knew, finally, that the answer was too many. Justice had arrived. Not with a bang, but with a binder. The end